Hey folks, this is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. When you're feeling a little down, do you find yourself craving chocolate? I know that I do. Well, it turns out brain science has something to say about that. And on today's show, we're going to talk about some foods that when you eat them, like chocolate, may positively impact your mood and even reduce anxiety. And today we're here with the perfect rock star guest. In addition to being a Harvard-trained psychiatrist with nearly 3 decades of experience in the field of medicine, Dr. Naidoo is also a professional chef, culinary instructor, trained nutrition specialist, and author of the new book, This Is Your Brain on Food. On today's show with Dr. Uma, you're going to learn how to shop for and eat healthy foods without breaking the bank, some key tips on supporting the 39 trillion bacteria living in your gut right now, how to get out of a junk food funk, and much, much more. Before we get there, I wanted to share this note that came in from Taylor, who says, "Hi Abel, I've been listening to your podcast for years. I absolutely adore you and your wife Allison." You even spelled that right. Awesome. "I cannot express how greatly I appreciate what you do. It is incredibly challenging finding reliable sources of real, true information about health and food. My passion and interest in nutrition began about 5 years ago, and I've been hooked ever since. I have plans to start graduate school this fall. Right now, I'm enrolled to become a registered dietitian, but have more recently considered switching to a pre-PhD track. Either way, my concern is that when I start my program, the content is going to be governed by big food and not align with what I've learned to be true about health and nutrition thus far. You talk a lot on your podcast about censorship, and I'm really interested in learning more about what has been going on with that. Where do you find resources to learn more about what big food company is funding what research? How can I figure out what research is reliable and trustworthy and what research is pushing some political figure's agenda? Do you have any resources you could send me regarding this topic? Do you have any advice for a student wanting to learn more about nutrition and be recognized as a licensed professional who does not agree with those in charge of the credentialing? I would love to hear your thoughts and insight. Also, check out my chocolate macaroons. They came out delicious." There's a picture of the chocolate cookies, which is one of our favorite recipes. Looks like these ones. Came out great. Taylor, before this show, especially because I'm talking to someone from Harvard who's been in academia, who's been highly credentialed for pretty much her whole career, I think it'd be interesting just to talk about this for a quick minute here, because pursuing the academic route can be wonderful and great and mind-expanding, or not so much, depending on how you go about it. In my experience, the ivory tower comes with rules, and credentials tend to come with limits on our free speech and expression, especially these days. So, for example, even speaking a little bit about certain topics, which shall remain nameless right now, I have a list of about 12 words that I'm not allowed to say right now. I'm self-censoring like I do normally on the podcast. If you even bring these up or question the top-down narrative, then you're probably going to be deplatformed or even lose your license if you are credentialed. That's a little tricky, and this is as true for nutritionists as it is for doctors. It's a double-edged sword no matter which way you go. As for the research and what to trust, the problem of big pharma, big food, and big whatever funding projects and being biased with their research and their studies, that's not new. That's been going on for a very long time. It does seem like it's getting worse, and even the ability to publish research that goes against certain narratives and agendas is becoming more and more impossible. So given your education, and those of you listening, if you already know how to read, study, statistics, and data, you have a big leg up and a big head start, but you also know that data can be warped, and you can use this data, or the data can be manipulated, the analysis can be manipulated with statistical tricks and all sorts of other things to kind of make the data say things that the data would never say on its own accord. So you have to watch out for that. I would encourage everyone to learn how to do your own research. Learning how to dig into whatever study or research you're interested in, and then learning how to identify the nonsense is a critical skill and a never-ending quest. So you can do that whether you're in school or not in school. We need you. If you want to be educated and learn and work within the system, we need you in the world of health to push it forward. We need you to help right the ship. There are a lot of people in power right now who do not have your best interests at heart. So if you're going to go in there and do the work and stay committed, then go for it. I don't care what direction you go in, what degree you get, you can do good there. So get after it. I hope this helps, Taylor. Thank you so much for getting in touch. Now, how about you? If you have a question, you can always email me at abel@fatburningman.com. If you have any pictures of your recipes, hit me up on social media and tag me. Let me know how you like those chocolate cookies or our latest sourdough recipes. I always love hearing from you. And then, of course, probably the easiest way to keep in touch and the least shadow banned and censored at this point is our newsletter. You can go to fatburningman.com, sign up for our newsletter, and then I'll send you some free recipes, meal plans, and other goodies on the house. And you can also just reply to my email. I always love hearing from you. If you'd like to support this show and help us keep this show coming to you, then please visit our tip jar over at fatburningman.com. I have coaching options, group coaching options, or if you just want to throw a couple bucks in the tip jar to keep this show coming and to keep us caffeinated and playing music and entertaining you as well, then please go to fatburningman.com/tip jar. One more thing before we get to the show, because we were just talking about chocolate. Take a look at Wild Superfoods. This is our family company, our own line of nutraceuticals and supplements. And since we were talking about chocolate here today, let's talk about collagen cocoa. It's one of our very favorite new supplements that we've been working on to get to you for years now, but we've been taste testing hundreds, maybe thousands of powders for future greens and collagen cocoa and all these other things over the years. And we believe that this is the very best tasting chocolate collagen we've ever tried. A lot of times we'll have it as a hot cocoa, especially after a long day of recording. But you can have it cold. You can put it in smoothies. I even like putting it in Greek yogurt. And one thing to note about collagen cocoa, it kind of looks expensive, but this is literally the largest amount of protein I've ever seen in a container. We try to make our shipping friendly to the environment as much as possible. And so instead of shipping tons of tiny little bottles or having small amounts of food and nutrients in our containers, we try to fill them up and we try to make them big. So collagen cocoa, you can find that over at wildsuperfoods.com. You can email me at abel@fatburningman.com and let me know what you think. Also, leaving a review for our products at Wild Superfoods as well as for this show. Make sure you hit subscribe, share it with a friend, all that good stuff. It really helps because the algorithms from the technocrats these days aren't being especially kind to those who ask questions and are thoughtful in general. And I'm not just speaking about me. There are a lot of people who you kind of have to dig to find these days, but it is worth it. So thank you for all your support. Thanks for sticking with us. And on to the show with Dr. Uma Naidoo. We're talking about shopping for healthy foods on a budget, tips for supporting the 39 trillion bacteria living in your gut right now, how to pull yourself out of a junk food funk, the difference between homemade sourdough and store-bought bread, how this Harvard-trained psychiatrist recommends indulging in treats, and much, much more. Let's go hang out with Dr. Uma. All right, folks. Dr. Uma Naidoo is a Harvard-trained psychiatrist with nearly 30 years of experience in the field of medicine. She's also an author, professional chef, culinary instructor, and trained nutrition specialist. Dr. Naidoo founded and directs the first hospital-based nutritional psychiatry service in the United States. She's the director of nutritional and lifestyle psychiatry at Massachusetts General Hospital, MGH, and director of nutritional psychiatry at MGH Academy, while serving on the faculty at Harvard Medical School. And of course, she's married to our friend and guest of this podcast, the wonderful and brilliant Srini Pillai. Dr. Uma's new book is called This Is Your Brain on Food. Dr. Uma, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Abel. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm excited to talk with you.
Me too, especially when looking into your work for the first time. I'm really excited by the fact that it seems like this field that you're kind of founding and getting out there is growing at exactly the right time.
You couldn't be more right. You know, it's an interesting thing. It's existed for a while. We just haven't had a name for it. When I think about it, my practice early on, Abel, when I first was learning how to prescribe medications in residency, I was thinking about what can I tell my patients about lifestyle? What can I tell them about that really large a cup of coffee that they're drinking with a ton of cream and complaining about the side effect of the medication, and how could I moderate that, and include that in the conversation. And part of it is that we really don't learn nutrition in medical school, so it was an obvious thing to share. Also, some of my mentors at Mass General have been doing some of the seminal research, decades ago, before I was there, on folate and methylfolate, omega-3s, and things like that. So what is really cool is that we are now calling this work nutritional psychiatry, because rather than being more of a soft science and a maybe, it's really now backed up by research. And so I'm excited that people are getting to know the field, and hopefully, we'll find out more in the book about how to feel better through food.
And it's a far cry from a lot of I don't really want to call it advice. It's more just like the lack of advice. You go into the doctor's office where you hear from doctors that diet doesn't matter. You hear from science or whatever, diet doesn't matter. And it's like, how could that possibly be in any way true?
It's exactly, or we tend to have some rote answers, because I've been there and done that, around what you should do for hypertension and what you should do for diabetes, because we're really not taught the breadth of it, and we're not really taught to integrate it. So I think that for me it's about taking it an extra step and helping people understand how important it is for mental health as well, because of the gut-brain connection and all those good things. But people seem to understand that they should exercise, they should worry about sleep, and they should eat for physical health. But they don't really realize that those same choices directly affect mental health. And that's I think, where there's information that is hopefully different and will be useful.
So, especially right now, it seems like elimination diets are more popular than ever, which can be very beneficial, but especially looking at your work, you quickly find that having diversity in your diet is important, as well as there are pros and cons of many different foods. Certainly some skew more to the pros side. So maybe we can start by talking about that.
Well, thank you for making a great point, because I think that my plan, the way that I work with clients, really tends to be highly personalized, based on the fact that our gut has its own 39 trillion bacteria in it, and each of those makes us unique. So your microbiome is different from mine, and I think about it in the way that I work with patients, because what they bring to the office is totally unique from someone else. So I don't give them a set plan. I listen very carefully to what they have to say, and each plan is designed. But that comes back to what foods they should include and not include. I'm very open to someone who walks in and says, I'm following this diet, doctor, and this is what I want to do. It's not that I am against any particular diet. I just do think that a biodiversity of plants, a whole foods diet, and lean proteins, if you're not plant-based and you eat other types of proteins, should be included. And you should do it out of a sense of balance for your whole body, but also your mind. And that's the thing that I try to put together for patients. So, for example, unless someone has celiac disease, including healthy forms of gluten is completely fine. If you can tolerate dairy, it's the kind of dairy you get, right? It's where you buy it, it's where it's produced, how it's made. Those finer points become more important. But if you can't tolerate it, by all means, as our unique guts exist, you might actually develop an intolerance or an allergy or what appears to be something. Of course, you should speak to your doctor and figure that out. And the best way that I have with individuals who don't have an acute allergic reaction is try a few weeks, 3 to 4 weeks without this food and see how you feel. And here's the really helpful information. Simple it might be, but you'll notice the difference. And if there's a difference and it works positively for you, maybe eat less of that or exclude it until at a later point we either reintroduce it very slowly or we build on the other foods in this kind of biodiversity plan.
And it gets tricky, doesn't it? Because like the names for foods or what we call foods can be the same thing, but fundamentally different. So what I mean by that is you can have industrial eggs, the cheap kind with the weak shells, and they're kind of this pale yellow yolk. Or you can go for the backyard eggs, which growing up in New Hampshire with backyard chickens are a completely different food. They taste different, look different, different textures.
Even the yolks have a more beautiful hue. It's absolutely true.
Exactly. So how do you help explain to people that nuance?
So that can be that can be a challenge from the perspective that some of those, unless you're fortunate to have chickens in your backyard.
Not anymore. I wish. Yeah.
Exactly. You have to rely on supermarket staples and things that you get at your local markets versus, some people don't even have access to farmers markets. So I ask them to, once I get their history and understand where they're at, I try to work from there. What do I mean by that? So if they have limited stores and they have stores that are just regular supermarkets, what other things? One of my favorite rules that some of my patients quote back to me is, if you go to a regular supermarket, stay in the outer room of the supermarket. That's where you're going to get your fruit, vegetables, proteins, dairy, frozen section, meaning healthy fruits and vegetables can be frozen and super healthy if you make sure you don't get the ones with sodium, added syrup, or sugar. And the middle shelves have, all the fun processed stuff, the stuff that we, probably should try to stay away from. So I will start with that. But then when you get down to the basics, if you can include some organic foods and you have access, try to do that. We talk about the Dirty Dozen, the list that people can see easily on the internet, or I can share with them, so you have some guidance. Maybe you can't get everything organic, but try to go for these things first. The other thing that I talk to them about is if some things are just what you have to cope with, then maybe if you're getting the eggs, try to get the omega-3 rich eggs. So you get the benefit of the omega-3s from that egg, even if it's not from your backyard. And then with sources of dairy, if you do eat dairy, then look for the grass-fed and stuff. And sometimes I'll pull up brands on the internet, not because I have any association with those brands, but just to give people examples of what it looks like. The other thing is that there are cool things out there, right? We talk about probiotics. Now some of the non-dairy yogurts are adding probiotics. So there's a lot more. Now there's A2 milk. People don't often know that until you either pull up a picture and show them on the internet or make them aware. So it's partly personalized, partly meeting the person where they're at, understanding where they're shopping, what their environment is, where they can get things from, and starting with whole foods-based plants, if you can include as many as you can, diversity, and then what types of proteins to eat.
What about the cost? Because a lot of people, that sounds way too expensive. I know that personally, we love A2 milk. My wife has a little more trouble with dairy than I do. I love dairy, but I always go as clean as possible. I really stay away. I'm not eating American cheese. I'm not even really eating inorganic or non-organic dairy. It's as much as we can. Cows that were raised the way that nature intended. So A2 milk in particular is maybe twice the price at our local spot.
Yeah, it's
same with cream.
Fancy. And so from my sort of chef background, food costing is so huge to restaurants and the food industry. So I try to break it down in this way for people. It's if you choose the higher, if that's important and you, for example, can't tolerate dairy, maybe get that more expensive milk. Use it less often, but maybe fill up on the healthy foods that are less expensive. The healthy greens that you can get a ton of foods for, legumes. If you eat your legumes, they're a super healthy source of protein, fiber, and nutrients. Those are usually inexpensive. So maybe in the week that I'll literally work out a food costing plan, and the week that you're going to buy that milk, maybe get these foods, which are going to be less expensive and help to balance your budget. What can you do, in other words, to come together? I think about it as a plate of food, right? If you're only eating one food on your plate every day, you should be talking to me. But I'm guessing that you're not. So I say this to my patients, think about it like a plate of food. On that day, if you're going to have that special food, then build it up with less expensive options that are sometimes shelf-stable options. During, the pandemic we talked about, what are the best types of legumes that you can get? And if they are sodium, low sodium, or they are organic, if again, they're more expensive, can you rinse them out and use them? Because not everyone could get, dried beans and legumes and that kind of stuff. So it's finding the balance. What can we buy that you can afford this week, and what are the things that you can give up this week? So maybe that week you don't need the grass-fed beef as well. Maybe this week we can do other sources of salmon that are even canned that we did during the pandemic as well. But which brands can you get at your supermarket? So it's about finding that plan for each person and really respecting that it's costly. It's really costly for people.
Well, and it's interesting too, because you have to look, or I try to look at the value of the food instead of the costs. Like the A2 milk at our local natural grocers, I think it is about $6-7, but it's for the A2 heavy cream. The heaviest whipping cream you can get. And typically that's what I'll put in my coffee. So if you look at the amount of calories that is in that $6 or $7, it's obscene. It's an extreme amount of calories compared to a lot of other foods that, if you try to get your caloric load from organic spinach, for example, and all your protein from organic spinach, it's going to be kind of like, you can do it. It's going to be expensive and an uphill battle though. And so that's another way. Like I appreciate what you said. You kind of have like maybe the star of the show for a few days. That's your main meal. Maybe even the cream for us, or a really special cheese. And then you kind of fill it in with some other things that might not be so expensive and might not be so extravagant and luxurious, but help fill you up and give you the other things you need. Now, I wanted to ask you about fiber in particular, because a lot of people right now are into the carnivore diet, or going super hard keto and getting rid of all plants because fiber's bad and plants are bad and they give you inflammation and skin problems and all the rest of it. So I would love to hear your counterpoint to that.
Absolutely. I did want to say one other thing regarding that balance on your plate. You kind of have to include the stuff that's affordable for what you do, and then find the things that you also enjoy and that are best for you. It's a tough balance. It's almost different for every single person. But yes, coming to fiber, I think that some people may unfortunately be giving fiber a bad rap, and it's not so much that they're making choices which I think are sometimes polarizing. If the only way we can get natural fiber is in fruits and vegetables, nuts, legumes, and seeds. You can't get it from meat proteins and even from seafood. So I think that while they might be adopting a lifestyle that is healthier for them, and maybe it works for them, I respect that. And I would hope that they speak with their doctors about it as well, because there are other things that a doctor can track for them. The whole absence of fiber, if you excluded, let's say, plants and vegetables, is that you're not feeding your gut with the food that it needs to really ramp up your immunity, to ramp up everything that you need to do to keep you healthy and to reduce inflammation, and thereby also impact how you're feeling emotionally. So I would just be concerned that over time, if someone wasn't eating any plants and vegetables, that for other reasons, not even related to what they particularly consuming, but the lack of fiber could lead to that biodiversity of the gut just dropping, and your bug's not having the good food that it needs to really thrive, and then working against you. Because what happens? You have dysbiosis, imbalance, all the bad things start happening. The leaky gut, your immunity is changed. And the gut-brain connection, with that linking back to the brain, is when people may present with all sorts of symptoms. And again, that goes back to sort of talking to them and getting a proper history to understand what are they actually doing. They may present to you with panic and anxiety and say, my primary care told me, I need to come and get Zoloft from you, of which there's a shortage, by the way. So if they actually understand that a little better and maybe include some plants, it would be better for them, because there's some possible long-term consequences that may be not so good, especially with the gut inflammation, leaky gut, etc.
And one other little piece that I feel like is getting lost is sometimes you can be doing things that are working and things that are not working at the same time, right?
Exactly.
So maybe you're starving out your bad gut bugs that thrived on sugar and ultra-processed food at the same time that you're starving out the bugs that might have been feasting on fiber and giving you extra nutrients that way, and giving you more diversity in your microbiome. So maybe, cyclically, this is a good exercise to go through and very educational. I think the people who are eliminating it's so interesting because many people are eliminating animal foods to reduce inflammation at the same time that other people are eliminating all plant foods to reduce inflammation. I would love your take on that.
Again, it's people come in and discuss a very large variance of diets, right? And I think the way that I stand on this is anything is okay for a short time, because we know and we understand about how the body works in terms of how inflammation sets in, and especially from gut inflammation to brain inflammation and neuroinflammation, that can, while the gut can change almost daily, the inflammation can take a little bit longer. So you have a slight window of time. And if you want to try out something and see how you feel, for a few weeks or something like that, I wouldn't sustain it without making sure that you know all of the background research on that particular area, because it's exactly as Abel. If you're excluding one complete group and another, unless you're allergic to something, that's not the way one should go. Because going back to the gut, our guts really thrive by that biodiversity. They also thrive by the fresh foods that you offer, the variety of the fruits and vegetables. All of those systems function because the largest portion of our immune system is in our gut. So, during the pandemic, people should be cautious and even at all times should always care about that. When you don't have a certain food, your gut bacteria can tell they're missing something. And while the good guys are doing badly, the bad guys are like, yay, I'm thriving, I'm doing well. And that's when you set up this cascade of events. So I would say, try something out, make sure you run it by a doctor, get some good scientific information on it. And try and don't sustain it if you haven't proven beyond a reasonable doubt at that point that you're going to thrive using this diet. People say you can't exercise out of a bad diet. It's all of those things together. None of those. My approach is more of an integrated, functional form of psychiatry. So I always look for the root cause, and in that way, you can't come to me about anxiety and not expect me to talk to you about mindfulness and meditation, because I'm gonna. I'm going to mention whether it's yoga, tai chi, qigong, whatever it is that appeals to you. I'm going to mention movement. It doesn't have, if you're depressed and severely anxious and you can't get on a treadmill, I won't talk to you about that, but I'll talk to you about movement. Maybe you can do something that can get you out of bed and get you moving. So again, it's meeting the person where they're at. And then in terms of their diet, it's, if you're only eating this, how about we try, a little bit of variance and see how you feel? Because I notice in individuals who come in with mental health issues, when they're able to see and feel a change is when that habit clicks in. It's very automatic. I notice it all the time. And at the same time, they're not following, what I'm suggesting. They don't feel that change. And then they're like, oh, it's not working. So it's a similar sort of thing when choosing these different kinds of diets as well.
And when you really clean up your nutrition plan, it's I feel like it's more of a slow burn. You don't eat and not that these are the optimal foods, but I'll just say as an example, pasture raised chicken and a bit of broccoli, for example. It's like you're probably not going to be super psyched about that in any particular way right away, but you do that for a while. And the slow burn effect of that is that your well-being goes through the roof and your energy goes through the roof. Not just that one meal, by the way, but, if you eat clean as opposed to dirty. So contrast that to what happens when you sit down and you're all bummed out and you're on the couch and you have the ice cream that's not organic, that's full of sugar, that's from cows that may not have been as healthy as they should be, not eating the way that nature intended. But you feel this flood of brain chemicals after eating it, and you feel wonderful maybe for a short period of time, then you feel terrible. How do you help pull people? I mean, that's kind of it's not fair, right? It's hard to fight against that. But so how do you come over to the other side?
Again, there's some sort of research on this, because a couple of things, right? So let's look at just the sugar component. We've looked at studies where sugar actually in the brain and on imaging kind of functions like a drug. And there's a reason that we become, it's a strong word to say addicted, but become so used to that sugar rush, that good feeling of, an ice cream or whatever it is, that maybe your favorite candy bar. This is the reason that fast foods actually have, fast food French fries actually have sugar in them. Many people don't realize that because you don't taste the sugar. But they do, because, lots of millions of dollars of research has gone into what makes them super palatable. And why can't you put them down? Why can't you not upsize? Because they're delicious, and there's a reason. So in a similar way, I talk about sugar in that way, whether it's ice cream or not. But there's also science behind the fact that you do get, the serotonin actually does get in your brain, and you feel great. You feel super, like I ate the type of ice cream or whatever it is, and I feel really good. So what's the problem, right? And so what I do is sort of kind of unpack it for my patients by saying, look, in the moment it's okay, but here's the thing: the fact that you feel good, the wrong nutrients are going to your brain. It doesn't mean that serotonin wasn't present, which is your happy hormone, but there are also the not so good things that went in too, and over time, those are what affect your brain and your gut, and the two are connected. So I'll even draw like a diagram of, it's like your brain and gut are in two different places. Yes, we are in the same body, but there's actually a vagus nerve that from before we were born has been connected from embryology stages. So I'll even draw that in a little diagram and say, from whence you were formed, it was there, and that connection existed. When you begin eating is when that gut-brain connection gets activated. And so, in the short term, it's almost like, do you want to date someone, or do you want to marry them? I'll use whatever analogy will appeal to that individual sitting with me. Sure, in that moment it's going to be great. It's going to be super fun for the half hour. But here's the thing, 3 months later, as you continue to do that, because you're like, what's the problem? I feel better when I eat the ice cream. It builds up, and the impact of it on your brain and the rest of your body you have to do a lot to come back from that.
But there's something in the middle, like having a bit of chocolate in it that's clean and doesn't have a whole lot of sugar, right? So I'd be interested in asking you, especially based on your background, what is like the dose response curve for eating a high quality chocolate? Do you see it that way?
So I have to say, I don't. It's not that I don't see it that way, and I hear what you're saying about. So sort of, do you if you have an unhealthy food, can you pair it with a healthier option? I try to talk about what I call a treat day. Instead of calling it a cheat day, I like to call it a treat day.
Yeah, me too.
Because food is enjoyable. You should have fun and enjoy stuff that you eat. So you mentioned, the chicken and broccoli, and some people may crave that, and that's what they eat. But it may take some getting used to. In the same way, if you want that, whatever your treat food is, have it by all means. Maybe the family decides that everyone gets a turn in the month. So on a Wednesday, maybe that's the treat day. Maybe it's a Sunday. Enjoy it. Stick within portion control. Enjoying it doesn't mean eating 3 tons of ice cream that day. Enjoy it, have fun with it, and then correct the next day. And move back to the healthier choice. The part about chocolate is that what we understand about it is that there's some cool facts, right? Because of the process of how chocolate is made, and we're talking super dark chocolate, high level of cacao, and the way that it's processed, and sort of when you add in the fats and the sugars, that's when it becomes the candy bars that people love, but are not the best. The chocolate in its pure sort of raw natural form is what's best. So there's some cool things. It has a process which involves fermentation. So it ends up being a good gut food. Who would have thought, right? Compared to kimchi and miso and pickles and that kind of stuff, it actually is good in that way. And the darker the better, but also the antioxidant levels are the best. So you might, it's funny, in culinary school, we taught to bake, and I love to bake it with Dutch processed cocoa, because the alkalizing process helps the flavor. But here's the thing. As a nutritional psychiatrist, that actually lowers the antioxidants. So that's a reason to sort of go for those natural cacao and more, I would say, raw forms of the chocolate, so that you can, whether you're baking or cooking or just having it as a snack, are better for you. We don't, or I don't know at this point that there's a dose that one should eat. But I do agree with if you're having, if you're having pizza, maybe, have your favorite pizza that day on your treat day, but maybe make a really good salad to go with it that has some great, good pre and probiotics in it. And so you're still doing your body good, but you're still having a pizza. Find that balance in every meal. I think that for example, if you do have the bowl of ice cream, maybe have some super dark, well-sourced dark chocolate with that. That's a way to go. And maybe that's your treat, So however you balance it off, I don't really know the doses yet.
Yeah, but one thing that I found that I think is important talking about super dark chocolate is bitters. And when you look at cuisine, when you look at cooking, that sort of thing, but also when you look internationally, it seems like there are a lot of blind spots in the way that America eats, in kind of the Western way of eating, that's missing the appreciation for those bitters, right? Because like the first few times you have really dark chocolate, or certainly anyone who's tried baking chocolate, you're like, what is this? This is totally bitter, very terrible. But actually, when you start working some of those flavors into your way of eating, it can be very beneficial for, I think, the flavor profile of foods and kind of your experience, offset a lot of the sweet cravings, but also your digestion and the way your body works.
Absolutely. It sort of goes back to making these small tweaks in your diet and noticing that you feel better. And you're absolutely right. We are sort of, unfortunately, we do eat the standard American diet for the most part. And we have kind of grown up in a culture of things that have a ton of, even savory foods have a ton of added sugar. There are the last time I checked, there are 61 other names for sugar on food labels that we don't recognize. So the point I'm making is that for many, many, many decades, we've eaten sugar without even knowing it was there, even in savory foods. People have much greater awareness now. And I think that opening our palates to other cultures, other flavors, miso is an excellent fermented food. Kimchi is a fantastic pickle and good for your gut. But if you're making it at home, you can adjust the sugar because it is made with sugar for the fermentation process. But you can open yourself actually to the culinary aspects of even spices, low calorie, super healthy. If you're not adding salt, this is a great way to increase the variety of different things, even to your vegetables that you're eating, and make something super delicious, but really get the benefits of it. So things like turmeric, I'll say to individuals who don't cook with turmeric and look at me like, it's not really a spice I like. I'll say, well, it's good, really, it's super good for you. Add a pinch of black pepper, put it in a smoothie. Put it in a soup. You won't even know it's there, but here's the thing. Quarter teaspoon a day, pinch of black pepper is going to do your body good from so many different perspectives, And what I like to say to them recently, there's also a study that showed that turmeric, in addition to the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory, even antiviral properties that it potentially has, also has an anxiolytic effect. So, if someone says to me, what can I do that's easy and isn't a pill? And I'll say, well, if you're open to it, at least try this. What can I buy in a bottle? And you can buy an organic turmeric in a bottle, and I can put it in my smoothie every day. You can at least do that because it's an easy thing they can grab onto if they don't want to cook, for example.
Yeah. So. And I think of it also as brain stimulation. It's like we kind of see our food as entertainment, so you might as well find some foods that are good for you to be that entertaining and fun. Yeah, exactly. So going back to that chicken and broccoli, put like some sort of jerk chicken dry rub on there and some turmeric, with the broccoli, and that's a lot more interesting for not that much effort and a lot more nutrition too.
Exactly. And things like adding citrus, one of my favorite you learn different things in culinary school, but one of the things is so simple. It's just always having fresh lemon on hand. They teach you like pantry staples that you should always have on hand. And, zest of a lemon, squeeze of a lemon instead of a store-bought salad dressing, or, lower calories. Then it's great to make your own vinaigrette and use some olive oil and stuff like that. But say you want to save on a few calories, this is easy, it's simple, it's in your fridge anyway. You can use the zest, you can use the outside, you can use the inside, and it's good for you. That burst of citrus not only boosts your vitamin C, it's adding back with any food going back to the idea of whole foods, they're offering so many nutrients that we try through nutritional science to break it down, but you really can't. There's so many more things that are good for you than bad for you in it that my feeling is, why not?
Yeah.
Why not add that? So.
Well, I'd like to revisit as well your treatment of words, because I think I don't know why the word cheat meal is so much more popular than treat or free meal or other ways of explaining it. But cheat, fears, shame, low emotions, you're doing something wrong, so you might as well just fall off the wagon and keep doing that, is kind of where I see a lot of people go with this. So how do you think about the differences between those concepts?
I feel like it's related to the brain and it's related to brain science and how our brain perceives fear and how it perceives words in our environment. A simple thing like daily gratitudes are related to brain science, and people actually do feel better when they practice. It's actually been shown. So in a similar way, I think when you have a negative connotation word, I think that we see it and we feel differently. And I realized that I was presenting a positive sort of treatment plan and dietary, nutritional breakdown, and nutritional psychiatry plan for my patients, but I didn't like the word because it made them feel bad. And it's similar to the word diet. I mean, I don't object to it, but I try to talk about food plans and meals and what can we do for your nutrition plan today? Because again, with diet, it implies you're giving something up. And when people feel they're giving something up, it's like there's often a boomerang effect to, I've given up ice cream for a month. Now whether I've lost weight or not, whatever their goal was, now I want to eat a ton of it. So in the study, very simply, they tested mice, and it was based on the fact that people come back in and say, even some reality TV shows have had people lose a really significant amount of weight, but it often comes back. And it comes back to the microbiome. It was actually shown, for want of a nicer term, there was almost like a fat cell memory or a fat memory within the microbiome and within the gut bacteria that were involved. That when they transplanted, it was a kind of a fancy experiment, but really well done. What it showed is that there's a real reason that people struggle to lose that weight again, because they might become lean, and their microbiome actually retains the memory of them being heavier. So there's a natural tendency to gain back that weight. But what they did is they found that there were that the microbiome of those mice were lacking in antioxidants. So they then broke down certain antioxidants that were specific that actually might help to combat that. So these sort of cool studies help us understand that there's information we can use to our best advantage as humans. We can use these things to our advantage in terms of how we eat, and understanding that it gets back to that level. So when we talk about treat and cheat, the brain interprets it differently. And when you give it a positive connotation, and when you talk to people in terms of foods they add back in instead of foods that they have to remove, they will just immediately respond better. Because when I show them, the plates and plates of food that they can have, it's not necessarily the amount, it's that I can have so many things, and you're telling me to try this diet that that I want to come in for, but it's actually not that. And then they understand that they're not eliminating stuff, and that they have a lot of variety of foods that they can eat, and they leave feeling a bit more comfortable that actually, I'm not asking them to starve or to give up something that they really love.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, too, that you mentioned that maybe it's not so bad to eat gluten sometimes, especially if your body is okay with that, and various other foods. Whereas the way that many people think about all of this is that if you ever eat the littlest bit of gluten, you're toast, and this is, you can never do it again, or you can never call yourself whatever you call yourself, and you're off the wagon or whatever.
But it also comes back to the quality, right? It comes back
Absolutely.
to the quality of the bread, or if you're buying the shelf-stable store-bought pastry and craving it, then have a tiny bite and give it away, or throw it away. So if it's truly something that's your thing, but if you baking bread from scratch and you're getting a well-sourced organic whole grain flour, the truth is that there isn't that huge benefit from the actual whole grain. You're getting less of it, but it's totally different from buying a bread that is full of stabilizers. Leave a bread of store-bought bread on your shelf for 3 weeks and see what happens. It was a test we did in culinary school, and it was perfectly fine. It was perfectly fine because it has stabilizers in it. So I think that it's also the quality. It's say you make pasta and it's how you sauce that flour, and again, this becomes something you enjoy, but maybe you don't eat it every day. Or it's the kind, like we talked about milk and that type of stuff in dairy. It's the source of what you incorporate. You don't have to give it up if you don't want to.
Yeah, and especially I'm sure you could speak to the fact that it's a lot of fun to have these experiments going in your kitchen. Like we have sourdough culture started going up there right now, and we just have made a couple of loaves, and they come out differently every time, and it's a lot more fun, and it's valuable in a different way. It's easy to just plow through kind of cheap, shelf-stable cheat foods, but for a homemade loaf, made by my wife or something like that, I'm not going to eat through the whole thing not thinking about it. It means more, right?
Exactly. Saucing it, and I love the fact that you mentioned sourdough bread, because it's the bread that I ask if people say, well, don't want to give up bread, don't make me. And I was like, no, I'm not asking you to give it up, but hey, you know what? Why not? If you're trying to do this, try sourdough bread. Get it from a really good bakery where they're making it from scratch, like you are, because the fermentation process actually lowers the sugar, and so it's often a good bread to start with, if or to stay with, if you're having a little bit of difficulty, say, with what you want to cut back on. And what I like about what you said is it's so true. When you make a wholesome loaf, you don't want to eat 5 slices, and it goes back to the preservatives and what's in food that makes us in the United States eat so much of it. It's sometimes those things that are built into foods that make us crave more and have difficulty putting them down. So, you probably have, a really good slice for your avocado toast or something else, or with your eggs, and move on. You don't need 5 slices because it's hearty as well,
Yeah, well, and it's different. I mean, you can't go to sourdough bread, for example, especially that you make at home, and expect it to taste the same as that kind of sterilized, shelf-stable loaf that's just kind of sitting out everywhere. It's not going to be the same, but also kind of coming back to your point about chocolate, when you're cooking in restaurants or when you're making on a mass scale, a lot of times they're trying to standardize those foods and take the individual flavors away. But when you really get into dark chocolate, you start to find that it's kind of like coffee. You can get these single origin chocolates that have very unique. Some of my favorite chocolates that I've had recently that I'd never tried before were from India, and the flavors in the beans were insane. It was out of this world.
That, and I'm trying to track them down. It's again, it's some you spoke earlier about sort of changes in your palate almost. If a person is open to more ideas, they can find something that that it's going to be a treat every single time, and you kind of get to enjoy it. And then you take that one example and you try to build it out in the other foods that you eat in your life. And I would just say that I know that I'm speaking about. Not everyone is going to bake their bread, and not everyone is, if someone's sending a kid to school and that's what they have to give them, it's maybe you have to buy the store-bought bread, but maybe you can buy more frozen vegetables. A bag of frozen vegetables can be pretty inexpensive, and maybe you can add other things into your kid's diet for that day that can balance off the stuff that you also have to feed them. Again, it's not ideal, but what do you do with the cost and the lives that we have to live?
Mm-hmm. Well, we could definitely talk all day, Uma, but what's the best place to find your work and your new book?
Thank you, Abel. It's at umanaidoomd.com.
Excellent.
And that's the website, and you'll find, links to purchase the book, links to keep in touch with us and get more information. And it also has all our links to social media. And we do post a lot of our studies, and not studies we've done, but studies we talk about to help kind of debunk the myths and the science involved, and what we think is cool for people to know on Instagram as well.
Wonderful. Your work is so important. I wish I could just like prop it up and put it everywhere in front of everyone because,
Thank you.
I mean, looking around, we need it more than ever. And you're a wonderful person. I love Srini too. Please give him a big hug from all of us. And thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Hey folks, this is Abel James, and I'm extremely excited to be here today with one of our favorite supplements of all time, Fizzy C. It's buffered vitamin C with citrus bioflavonoids in the form of a tasty little powder. Now the trick with this is just start with a little bit at a time. As opposed to some other vitamin C's that taste horrible, really sour, and hard to get down, this actually is pretty easy to get down too much. And so if you have too much vitamin C, you know what happens. So the point is you want to take a small amount. It's easy to overdo it with these. So just a teaspoon or less is good to get started. But what Fizzy C is a high quality source of vitamin C in the form of ascorbic acid, calcium ascorbate, magnesium ascorbate as well. And then there's potassium bicarbonate that's added as well as a buffering agent. And this makes it a little bit easier to get down. And I find this to be pretty much the tastiest form of vitamin C out there. So if you're interested in Fizzy C and you have any questions, please get in touch. We can't wait to see how you like our brand new Fizzy C. Get in touch and let us know. This is Abel signing off. We'll talk to you soon. Well, hey there, listener. This is Abel one more time, and I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Fat Burning Man Show. If you liked it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you might be listening to or watching this show right now. And if you have a second, please leave me a quick review for the Fat Burning Man Show. I read every single one of them, and every time you leave a review, it gives us a little boost in the rankings, and that helps other people find this show. And if you can think of someone else who might enjoy and benefit from this free show, please take a second to share it with a friend or a family member. And if they're like, what is this Fat Burning Man thing? That's a really silly name. You could be like, you're right, but here's the deal. We've recorded over 250 episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show with thought leaders in health from all over the world. And so far, we've won 4 awards, hitting #1 in health in more than 8 countries internationally. We have more than 30 million downloads already, but we're just getting started. I can't believe any of this, by the way, and couldn't do any of this without you, so thanks once again. But here's some more good news. You can download and listen to every single episode of the Fat Burning Man Show for free with 0 outside advertisements, no outside sponsors, and no corporate overlords. All you have to do is type in fatburningman.com. I'll give you a second here just to type it in, fatburningman.com. And you'll get all the show notes, transcripts, and video and audio versions for all the past episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show for free. Better yet, enter your email at fatburningman.com, sign up for my newsletter, and I'll even send you a quick start guide so you can take your health into your own hands right now, along with a few of our ridiculously tasty recipes as a special thanks for signing up. Once again, just go to fatburningman.com right now, enter your best email to get your free goodies with a bonus surprise straight to your inbox. This is Abel James signing off. Thank you so much for listening once again, and have a great week.